introduction. My name is Parm. It's a little hard following up that many amazing speakers, but I'm going to make them all seem a lot better now. So there isn't a ton of topics that I feel qualified to speak about in front of this many people. One of the few is me. I seem to know me quite well. More specifically, I'd like to talk to you guys today about decisions. So decisions are something that I've always struggled with, something that's always given me a great deal of anxiety. And I'd like to just touch on, how I kind of got past that anxiety and what helped me. So when I look back at myself 6 years ago, I was a wide-eyed kid. I was starting my undergrad, and I could not have been more indecisive. It didn't matter whether it was big decisions or small, whether it was choosing the major for my undergrad or whether or not I wanted extra block. Decisions crippled me. So where did that anxiety come from? A part of it came from debating whether or not I had thought about a decision long enough. A part of it came from considering, had I taken all the information I had at my disposal, into consideration. And, most obviously it came after the decision with, did I make the right decision? So two things kind of changed my mind on that and changed the way I thought about decisions. And I'd like to tell you about those. So the first is the story about the Chinese farmer. So once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer who had a horse run away from his farm. And that night, all the neighbors gathered and said, "That's too bad." And he said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, and it brought back with it 7 wild horses. And again that night, all the neighbors gathered, and they said, "Well, that's great, isn't it?" And he said, "Maybe." The day after that, his son was trying to tame one of the wild horses, and it threw him off, and he broke his leg. So again, all the neighbors, they had this thing, I guess they gathered every night, and they gathered. And they said, "Well, that's too bad, isn't it?" And he said, "Maybe." The day after that, the conscription officers showed up looking to draft people for the army. And they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. And so again, all the neighbors gathered, and they said, "Well, that's just great, isn't it?" What did he say? Maybe. The world is complex, and it's impossible to tell whether anything is good or bad. What are the consequences of good fortune or misfortune? We don't really know. So in looking at some of the decisions I've made in my own life, I've kind of realized that the consequences aren't always so clear-cut. So way back when I decided to go to UBC and study sciences, it was a decision that I thought was a good one. It was one that my parents thought was an especially good one. But now looking back on that, maybe it wasn't the best decision. I graduated with a ton of student loans, but the BC government got rid of the interest on those, so shout out to them. I graduated with a degree that has nothing to do with the field or the industry I work in now. So, yeah, thanks. So it depends. Inversely, sometimes we make really poor decisions. I had a friend who, one night after a party decided to drive her and her friends home. At the time she was high, but she thought it was the best decision because all of her friends were severely intoxicated. She thought she was the most sober of the bunch. She got pulled over on the way home. She got charged with a felony. She was arrested and got charged with a felony for driving under the influence. And it threw her life out of order. She lost her job. She thought it was just about as poor a decision as you can make. And I think a lot of us would agree with that. Because when she told me that story, didn't know how you rebound from that, how you come back from that. Since she, realized the struggles that people with felonies and people with records go through trying to find employment, and has now found a very meaningful job helping those people, helping former convicts and people with felonies find employment and helping them become contributing members of society again. So that removed a bit of the importance I was placing on decisions for me. Because maybe it didn't matter, that my life was my life, and that I would only know the life with every decision being made the way it was. So I'd like you all to take a moment right now and think about a particularly poor decision you made, one that you think, that if you could go back and change, one that you have a little bit of regret about. And think about what good came of that decision. What in that decision, if nothing else, brought you to where you are right now? So we'll give you all a minute, ponder that over. You don't have to share it. Think about it for yourself. We'll get some water. It's a good exercise. I strongly recommend you guys think about it later, if not now. And the other one is take a moment to look at your good decisions. Look at what bad came of them. You know, what opportunities might you have deprived yourself of? What people in your life did you alienate? So that brings me to the second thing that kind of changed my thought and opinion on decisions. And that was a lecture by Alan Watts, who is a British philosopher. I believe the lecture was titled Way Beyond Seeking. And he said you should regard yourself as a cloud in the flesh. And I thought, what does that mean? The way he saw it, clouds don't make mistakes. You know, you've never seen a misshapen cloud. You've never seen one go the wrong way. You've never seen, a wave behave poorly. But if you treat yourself for a while as a cloud or a wave and realize that you can't make a mistake, that even if you do something really disastrous, that it'll all come out in the wash one way or another, then through that capacity, you'll develop this confidence. Through that confidence, you'll develop this intuition. And it doesn't matter whether you make that decision or not, whether you decide you can't make a mistake or not, because it's true anyway. I've tried to carry myself with that self-confidence and trusting my intuition ever since. And while it's certainly challenging at times, it's definitely alleviated some of that anxiety I had around making decisions. And I've come to understand that you never really can take all the data into consideration, because the data that you can take into consideration is infinite, and at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. So you just have to go through the motions and trust that you're making the right decision. And if you're not, maybe it doesn't matter anyway. Anyway, that's my talk. Thank you.